Hello and welcome. Today, we're diving into a story about a second chance, but on a truly epic scale. It's a story about spectacular failure, incredible forgiveness, and a divine encounter so powerful it literally left a physical mark. We're unpacking the powerful narrative of Exodus chapter 34.
So everything we're about to talk about really boils down to this one question. How do you repair a sacred promise, a covenant, once it's been completely shattered? This is more than just an old story. It's a deep, human drama about what it takes to get another shot after a total disaster.
And our story kicks off with a direct and pretty blunt command. In Exodus chapter 34, verse 1, God tells Moses, "Hew thee 2 tables of stone like unto the first which thou breakest." You see that? The backstory is baked right into the command. A sharp reminder that the first tablets, the original 10 commandments, were destroyed by Moses himself in a fit of rage. This is the do-over. This is the attempt to rebuild what was broken.
And that brings us to the first part of our story, a second chance. This is where Moses is given this monumental task of, well, literally picking up the pieces and starting over. But this second chance isn't easy. It comes with a set of incredibly specific and deeply personal instructions. Now, these instructions, which we find in Exodus chapter 34, verses 1 through 3, are so precise. First, Moses has to carve the 2 stone tablets himself this time. Second, he has to climb Mount Sinai early in the morning. And third, and this is crucial, he has to go completely alone. In fact, Exodus chapter 34, verse 3 is emphatic about it. No man shall come up with thee. This is a solitary, high-stakes meeting. Just one man and his God. So what does Moses do? Well, Exodus chapter 34, verse 4 tells us he obeys without a moment's hesitation. It says, "And he hewed 2 tables of stone, and rose up early in the morning, and went up unto Mount Sinai, as the Lord had commanded him." He follows every single instruction to the letter, setting the stage for an encounter that is going to change him forever. This act of perfect obedience leads us right to the absolute heart of this whole chapter, the name proclaimed. This isn't just a conversation. This is a divine revelation, where God himself declares his own character in his own words. The scene is just set with so much power. Exodus chapter 34, verse 5 says, "And the Lord descended in the cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the name of the Lord." I mean, can you just imagine that for a second? Moses, all alone on this mountain peak, as a divine presence descends right there to meet him. And this is the core of that revelation. In Exodus chapter 34, verses 6 and 7, God passes right in front of Moses and declares his own nature. And it's this incredible paradox. On one hand, he is overwhelmingly merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abundant in goodness and truth, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. But on the other hand, there's this unbending line of justice. The declaration ends with this critical phrase, that he will by no means clear the guilty. It's this profound tension, infinite mercy and perfect justice, held together in perfect balance. So after this absolutely stunning self-revelation, the foundation is laid to formally rebuild the covenant. And like any binding agreement, this one comes with specific terms, with responsibilities for the people of Israel. The promise itself is incredibly powerful. Exodus chapter 34, verse 10 declares, "Behold, I make a covenant. Before all thy people, I will do marvels." So that's the divine commitment. Now let's take a look at the human responsibilities that are expected in return. All right, the number 1 rule is all about allegiance. Exodus chapter 34, verse 14 makes it crystal clear. "For thou shalt worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God." And this is driven home again in Exodus chapter 34, verse 17, which commands, "Thou shalt make thee no molten gods." This is a direct, unmistakable shot at the golden calf incident, the very thing that shattered the first covenant. The covenant also sets up a whole rhythm for their lives through these really important observances. According to Exodus chapter 34, verses 18 and 22, 3 annual feasts are required for all men to attend. And these aren't just holidays. They are national acts of remembrance and thanksgiving that shape their entire year and retell the story of their relationship with God. And finally, the covenant cements a foundational principle, the Sabbath. Exodus chapter 34, verse 21 repeats this essential law. 6 days thou shalt work, but on the 7th day thou shalt rest. This command builds a non-negotiable pattern of work and restoration right into the fabric of their lives. So Moses receives these terms for the new covenant.
But his time on the mountain isn't even close to being over. He doesn't just get the message and leave. No, he stays in the divine presence for this extended, intense, and frankly, supernatural vigil.
For how long, you ask? Well, Exodus chapter 34, verse 28 tells us straight up, he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. Now, in the Bible, that number, 40, almost always signals a period of profound testing and transformation. And this right here, this is the ultimate example. The sheer intensity of this experience is captured in one staggering detail from that very same verse, Exodus chapter 34, verse 28. For those entire 40 days, it says, he did neither eat bread nor drink water. Think about that. That's a humanly impossible fast. It's a clear sign that Moses was being sustained by a power far, far beyond the physical world. And all of this brings us to the stunning conclusion of the story, the unveiled face. Because when Moses finally comes down from that mountain, he is not the same man who went up. This 40-day encounter has left a visible, physical, and absolutely radiant mark on him. The climax of the story is revealed in Exodus chapter 34, verse 29. As Moses is coming down the mountain with the new tablets, the text tells us something incredible. Moses wist not that the skin of his face shone. He had no idea. He was completely unaware of his own terrifying and glowing transformation. Now, Moses might have been clueless, but everyone else saw it immediately. Exodus chapter 34, verse 30 describes their reaction. Quote, "Behold, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come nigh him." The reflected glory of God was so intense, so bright, that it literally terrified them. So how did he handle this? How do you live like that? Exodus chapter 34, verses 33 through 35 explains his solution. He used a veil. He developed a system. Whenever he went to speak with the Lord, he would take the veil off, stand in open communion. But when he came back out to speak to the people, he would put the veil back on his face, shielding them from a glory they were just too afraid to look at directly. And so we're left with this final thought. This whole story isn't just about stone tablets or a man with a glowing face. It's a powerful metaphor for transformation. It really forces us to ask ourselves, what does it truly mean to be changed by an encounter? And how do we carry the evidence of where we've been and who we've been with?